Hello, good evening, and welcome to SMB. Daniel Outledge and Dave Forrester with you to go through all of the action this week in Super League basketball. Dave, before we get underway, there was something I wanted to talk to you about. There was something came to my attention this week, and
Right?
obviously, you and I think our listeners know, have a reputation of sort of railing against hype and hyperbole. We
Yes.
saw
Yeah.
the buckets and the Q money train and where that was heading
Yeah.
last
Yeah.
year, long
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
anybody else. And we have that reputation of bringing history in. And what about Kingston in 1992 and all of that sort of thing? So I saw a tweet this week, Dave, which I thought probably fell into the hyperbole trap, and I wanted to bring it up on at the beginning of the show here today.
Yeah.
Let me just read it out for you. I'll read
Yeah. Yeah.
it. I'll read it, including the typos. It says, I'm still not quite sure how it happened, but I think I've just witnessed one of the greatest pound for pound victories by a British team in Europe, certainly on modern times. Hashtag tough as hell. Now, who wrote that?
It was
At
me.
Shields Brief?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Dave! Dave!
Modern times, Dad.
Pound for pound, modern times? Oh, come on, Dave.
Modern times.
So here's my take. I saw that and I thought you got
Modern times is this century.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll
Okay.
take that. I'll take you this century. I'll
Right.
still so let me give the audience some context before you defend
Yeah.
yourself, Dave.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I've not watched any of the games this. I had three European games myself to do, so I've not seen any of the games involving British teams. So I'm coming at this slightly blind, and I don't have the advantage of being in the gym like you were. And Newcastle beat Voluntari, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
On when was it? Wednesday,
Tuesday night. Tuesday
Tuesday
night.
night.
Yeah.
So my general rule, I've covered European basketball for 20, 25 years, something like this. General rule of thumb in these competitions is if you're going into the competition expecting to make the knockouts or the playoffs or whatever the format of the thing is, you need to win your home games. And
Yeah.
what separates the good teams from the really good teams is the really good teams win away from home. Now, I would have put Newcastle in the brackets of expecting to make the playoffs based on what they did last year in the EMBL. A bounce of the ball here or there, they could have won the competition.
Certainly.
Um, so I'm not going to give Newcastle.
That team last year wasn't winning anything. Sorry. Go on.
Well, they weren't far away, were they?
Close to being
Really?
back in, but yeah, I get
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah. And did back and not go on and win the competition.
Yeah. But I'm still. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just the thing.
Yeah.
So I'm not giving Newcastle credit for doing what they supposed to do, to
Yeah.
use the term.
Ooh.
You're
Ooh.
supposed to win your home games in
Yeah.
in thing. And I golf clap for coming back from 17 down. But if you win a game, you shouldn't be 17 points down would be the thing. So in the context of that, Dave, I'm not even convinced that it was the best European win this week because Bristol, with no wins, went to Brno and won in two periods of overtime. So they've won on the road. Now you and I can debate whether the third best Romanian team is better than the third best team from Czechia
Well,
or
I saw
that sort of
Brno
thing.
last year in Newcastle and
Yeah.
knocking Bristol down, but the Brno I saw at Newcastle and the Voluntary I saw at Newcastle were two very different teams.
But so
But it was
we
on the
can
road
we
like
can we
that.
can argue they're on the road. That my point is more it's they're on the road and they hadn't actually won a
Yeah,
game. So I do that. But I'd still go back to it. Well, modern era. I'm quite happy to live in the modern era. Caledonia
mhm,
obviously beat a BBL team this
yeah,
year, and
true.
I know they didn't qualify, but we're
Yeah,
looking at. We don't know if Newcastle are going to qualify. I mean, they almost certainly will, but we're looking
yeah.
at one-off games in the thing. They beat they beat the defending champions in
Anvil, yeah,
2023.
the Anvil
Anvil,
last
that
week.
was it. I was trying
Yeah,
to think. I knew it
yeah,
was a Polish team. I was trying to think who it was. Obviously, London beating Badalona, and I know you've gone. I know you put the pound for pound in.
yeah,
Probably
deliberately.
take
Yeah,
out the financial sort of doping bit, but that's still
no, London
historic.
being Barcelona, but it was two comparable. Again, it was two comparable teams. I think.
And then what London did in the Europe Cup pre salary cap going and when they were a normal team was
Yeah,
pretty
true.
good. But if we're gonna do, you said 2000, so therefore Brighton won
Surely.
In Split. They won in Vilnius against Ritas. They beat Cholet, as you say, double overtime.
Yeah, and afterwards.
Birmingham made the final four of a European competition, and pretty sure
Yeah.
Yorick Williams was the MVP of the competition as well, if I remember, or the
Yeah, but that was a
final four.
competition which didn't last long, wasn't it?
It was a competition that didn't last very long, but it's still a competition that was being played.
Was the
London
NABL as opposed to
Towers.
the EMBL.
Yes, exactly. London Towers, some of their European exploits. I mean, everybody goes straight to EuroLeague. They only won one game in 2 years,
Yeah.
but they did pretty well in the other European competitions. They were in the NEBL alongside Birmingham one year as well, and got to at least the quarterfinals. I can't remember off the top of my head. And obviously, what your modern era allows you to take out Kingston beating
Kingston, of course, yeah,
Paris and
and that did,
Maccabi
yeah. I
and
mean, that,
Cesca
yeah,
and all of that
I'm
sort of
never
thing.
going to compare with that. I mean, that was, Gallus and Co. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
the world. And
And obviously, it also takes out Oldham Celtics when they were in NVL Division One, beating AS Monaco in a second leg.
and I
Admittedly,
mean,
not enough to win the tie, but
and I'll happily admit that I didn't go through each and every one of those before I sent that celebrating
mm,
retweet out.
yeah.
Happily. But what I will say is as follows, and I got pulled up a little bit by a couple of lads from Caledonia about it, which is fair enough. But what I'll say as follows, the game that I watched on Tuesday night, and we'll get into it because it actually has some relevance to what I'm done on Friday, was a remarkable game. Um, as you say, not because ultimately Newcastle won it, but in my lived basketball experience, I struggle to remember any team being down 12 with 4 minutes to go, not giving up a point and going on a 16-0 run to win a game.
What did Caledonia do against Ludwigsburg?
They
Wasn't it
were they
something
were
not dissimilar to that
not
though?
dissimilar, but I'm not giving up a point
Mm,
to win the game. On top of that, to um to do it in the way that it happened, which is basically two guys basically just took over a basketball game. It's a long time since I've
mm,
seen two guys. I mean, Alan Aikens and Akara combined for 28 out of 36 points in the fourth quarter. But more than that, the fact that it was so different to anything that had gone on in the first 37 minutes, because Newcastle were basically outplayed by a better team for 37 minutes. And how they managed to win that game. And that's when I say pound for pound, that's it. It's like, if you watch the first 35 minutes of that game, there is no doubt in your mind who's going to win that game.
mm.
Just none. But they got six Americans, a guy from Arizona State, good. They're about twice as good as the other European teams that we've seen in that league at the arena, certainly in person. They got Romanian national point guards as well. And they played like they were together, that they were well coached, they moved the basketball, they did everything you meant to do to win the game. And so I suppose I probably maybe framed the tweet a little bit wrong. But when I said pound for pound, it was just like, how did they win that game? And so it would probably have been the better way of phrasing it would have been the most remarkable, as
Okay.
did I put it
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was, and on top of that, and to be fair, it does have a little bit of added gravitas because both teams are 4-0.
Yeah.
And that adds it a little bit. If it's just a home game in the NBL, yeah, absolutely. That probably doesn't compare to what Nick Nurse did. It probably doesn't even compare to what Caledonia did, albeit Caledonia weren't qualifying.
Mm.
And so, and Ludwigsburg, New Caledonia weren't qualifying. I get, I'm not looking that. And on top of that, Caledonia surrounded that game with some horrendous,
Yeah.
with
Yeah. Yeah.
22-point home
Well, we
difference.
can only look at a game in the context of the 40 minutes.
We
And
can
I
do.
suppose I suppose the part of me was thinking is I've just said Brighton, you said Cholet, and I was
Mm.
actually going to
Split.
different games.
Yeah.
I don't think if we're still doing this crazy stuff in 20 years' time, we'll go back to. Do you remember that game against Voluntari?
I will, because to be honest, as I say, I don't think I've ever seen I don't think I've ever seen a game turn in 3 minutes like it did through basically force of will from two players. Just force of will. So remarkable is a better word.
Mm,
They just had no right to win that game. And there was people in the and there wasn't that many people in the arena. It was loud, but nobody in the arena thought they were going to win that game. In fact, and you saw you just sitting there thinking, yeah, these guys are quite good. This is a level we've got to get to.
mm,
And suddenly, they hit a 4-point play with 3.5 minutes to go up 12, and they don't score again.
mm.
So it was, yeah, okay, fair enough. Point taken. Don't tweet
Uh,
emotionally,
so
Forster. I get
so
that.
wait, last week you were, was it last week you were bending to sweets and this week hyperbole? Who is this man?
Uh, I think, honestly, I think it may have been injudiciously worded, but the sentiment around two 4-0 teams and a team that absolutely dominated us and ended up somehow losing the game, that made it just it was a very special night actually for
Mm,
those who were there. It
mm,
was like Jesus, how you know because that was a proper team, and
mm,
not all the teams I've seen in the NBL I would describe as proper teams.
mm,
Not at all. And that would be even the backing team that the Eagles played last year. Yeah, they were okay. But I would put a voluntary ahead of them and what I saw. But it was just remarkable. Anyway, sorry, moving on.
Moving on, we'll
Yeah.
go. Let's get back.
Go back and watch the last 3 minutes. It's great. I
Yeah,
watched the last quarter. It's up. There's 36. They scored 48 points in the first three quarters and 36 in the last quarter.
yeah,
And the Corona Vikings had 28 of them.
yeah.
And there's only a couple. The others were a couple like cheap foul shots near the end. It's just bizarre, bizarre game.
Uh, let's go back to what we normally do, which is picking
Um,
holes in various bits of
Oh,
this
and by the way, that's
everybody.
not to knock Bristol either. It's a great
Yeah,
win for Bristol,
yeah,
and
it
Bristol.
is.
We'll talk about Bristol later on as well.
It's a
You
great
know,
week for Bristol, to be
great
fair,
week for
but
Bristol. We're going, and I haven't watched the Burnout game, so I haven't. I'm like you. I didn't get time to watch that game, but I'm not minimizing. Going over there and winning in double overtime. That shows a degree of
yeah,
togetherness.
yeah.
We'll get to this in a little bit later on when we actually start talking about the pros and cons of this European stuff, particularly for the NBL teams, because
So,
there
so
are pros and cons.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's start with Bristol. We'll go to Friday night. Bristol Flyers 92, Cheshire Phoenix 83. This was quite possibly the best first leg semi-final win in the history of British basketball, or at least in the
It's week.
SLB era.
It is, yeah, 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 yeah.
No Larry Austin for Cheshire. He's got that hamstring injury that he went out of the game with last week. I assume it was weather related. I watched this back on Synergy. The pictures were a little
Yeah,
a little blurry, but I don't know if it was the blurry kit day. But I was getting slightly sort of Birmingham Bullets mid 1990s vibe from that Cheshire kit. Even that sort of
the
Phoenix across the thing sort of said looked like Peugeot. I don't know.
Peugeot, yeah, yeah. I've seen, the picture of the five of
Just
them.
I don't know. I assume it was the dodgy pictures made me think of that, but it just
I know what you
while we're
mean.
talking
There's a
about
couple of very dubious kind of 1990s pictures with Sims and Flannery and Dorsey with the
yeah, yeah,
cars and stuff like
yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
knocking around the internet. Yeah, I know what you
yeah.
mean.
So anyway, that aside, fast-paced start, kind of what you expect with these two teams. Nothing really much in it in the scoreboard. 24-22 after the first quarter.
Nothing much in the scoreboard, but boy, the Cheshire bench was interesting, wasn't it?
Mm,
You put your starting lineup in. Within 40 seconds, you take one of them out. Within another 40 seconds, you take another one. So White came out at 40 seconds. T came out about a minute and a half in. And you're basically starting all over again. And
mm,
I'm looking at it thinking, what's going on? Because, when you're coaching, the first thing that you do, all you can really control as a coach before in the week before a game is about the first 5 minutes. You got about 5 minutes of stuff that this is the kind of stuff we want to run. This is what we know the opposition are going to run early, where they like to get the ball, that type of thing. You prepare your team for kind of that first 5 minutes, and then you go with the flow, and you hope to be able to predict it. In certain games, you can predict who's coming off the bench and when, depending on who you're coaching against and who your matchups want, who you want your matchups to be. But you're managing that stuff as you're going along. You kind of got 10 plans in your head and you're picking, is it number one, number three, number five, number seven, as depend foul trouble can change things, injuries can change things, whatever. But you know, you're preparing your team for the first 5 minutes, right? These guys, you're starting on him, you're starting on him, you're starting on him. 40 seconds later, that's like one and a half players, Skylar White's out.
mm,
No. another 40 seconds later, Taj Teague is out. Now, that's like, well, that's changing the way you're playing entirely.
Mm.
Totally. You know, you're taking your two big guys out there, with whom you play one way. And if you're taking them out because they've done something wrong, well, you haven't really given them much time to put it right,
Mm.
you know. And if you're that worried about the way they were, then you shouldn't have been starting them in the first place. So that was like immediately like, what's happening? What's going on here? You know, and sometimes instability can work. You know, sometimes you push the buttons of the players to get a reaction from them if you think they've started out about a bit lackadaisical or something like that. But I didn't see that much evidence for it. And even then, that's an incredibly quick trigger. Yeah. So, you know, that comes to a certain degree, I think, of searching for what you want to do. But anyway, the game started and it kind of went the way, as you said, it's two teams who don't really defend they don't set out to defend in the 3 point line. I think that's the best way of putting them. You know, they're happy to take their chances on you, missing your percentages and then getting the rebounds and rebounding the ball well, as opposed to selling out and giving up stuff inside. And yeah, both teams scored quite comfortably.
Uh, Second quarter, Bristol with their Irish music mogul hitting threes, Louis and Walsh. Moved to 38-29 ahead. That was really when they got on
You
top of
say
the
that, but
game
I mean,
then.
the only one with any Irish heritage there has to be McCormack. Look at him, he's pale and
Yeah.
ginger. If he hasn't got a bit of Irish in him, who has?
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, but go on.
So they were ahead at that. They were ahead at that point. Bristol. Cheshire did have it down to three in the third quarter, but Walsh three threes. Johnson one as well. Flies out to 16, 65, 49. And this is always the psychology of of aggregate basketball is when you're up, it's that is
Yeah,
this lead big enough? Can we defend it? Any point you lose is a point you worry about, sort of thing.
yeah, true. I thought they lost Louis in the second quarter. I think he went
No,
down.
I think it was later than that.
The quarter.
He rolled an ankle. I didn't. I saw him roll the ankle. I didn't see what treatment he got, but he obviously never returned. He was having a scan on Sunday.
He
So.
started. Looked like didn't look great, and the way he was reacting to it. He started. You know, he was pretty competent in the
Mm,
minutes he played. He plays at a certain speed. He's not going to blow by you, but he made good decisions. He knocked down some shots. You know, and he got there and passed. He got in the lane and made good passes as well. So you know how long he's out for will be a potential issue for them. And obviously coming off the double overtime in Bristol, it does mean that they're playing guys quite a lot of minutes. Um, Cheshire could not string together stops over the course of the weekend.
mm.
In fact, they could hardly get any stops over the course of the weekend.
What did they give up? 200 points, wasn't it, in two games?
Yeah, 200 points in two games. And ultimately, if you let teams get comfortable on their home floor, or you need to let teams get comfortable at all, in this game it was Evan Walsh knocking down threes,
Mm,
you know, and Bristol are playing less guys, less players. They're in rhythm. They played on Tuesday night. They're feeling good about themselves. They've got the talisman back, who's flying,
mm,
in Keedy. And if unless you commit to defending them um, properly, then you're going to struggle. And I don't think they defended them at all, to be honest. The other thing, as I say, with Cheshire is that you never quite know it's got to that point, but you never quite know who's going to be playing or who's going to be the guy who gets the kind of the bulk of the minutes, whether it's going to be Atwood, it's going to be Scott Grayson, Kristen is Holden going to be the point guard all the time, or they're going to, without Austin, they don't really have that kind of depth kind of piece. And kind of got the impression, I just think that like that kind of works when you're winning. But when you're losing, it becomes harder.
mm,
And then because it gives players excuses. You know, it's not my fault. I didn't play that many minutes today or whatever. So Rock's been in and out. He's played some games. He's played 7 minutes. Some games he's played 20 or 30 minutes. And I think the impression I got in both the games, and we'll talk about the second game later, obviously, is that they're probably in need of just a little bit more. structure, a little bit more role confirmation. Um, because and it doesn't necessarily show on the offensive end, but it might because they're all getting they're getting shots because they're all good players. But on the defensive end, I think it kind of does. And the way that teams are going nowadays, in this league now, it's going to be how you defend players. Everybody can
Mm,
score.
mm,
It's all going to be about your defense. And it's going to be small margins. And I don't think they're playing the small margins very well at the moment. So they got away. I mean, obviously they got away. Bristol got away, but you're never going to get fully away from Cheshire. They're always going to fly around until they crack. And they kept playing as they always will, and they kept scoring as they will.
yeah. And it was basically it bounced around 10. It looked like it was going to be that sort of margin. I did write down because I wrote this down before the second leg about I wasn't quite sure about the plays at the end either way because it was Cheshire advanced the ball when there was 24.7 seconds and I thought well, I'd run that down to the buzzer and they obviously hit a three. But then was it Keedy Johnson went too fast? But I guess they got an offensive rebound. So is it too fast if he got an offensive rebound and Thomas Edwards scores on the
Well, I
buzzer?
mean,
But if they'd scored, they'd have given Cheshire a chance to go back the other way.
yeah. Well, if somebody wants to email me why someone wants to tell me why Cheshire advanced the ball, I've just got no clue. I
Mm,
mean, the only thing I could think was that maybe they wanted to run a set out of their half court,
mm,
something which is easier to get into out of the half court than it is out the full court.
mm,
And they made a three, and they came out of it up a point. But from my perspective, from the numbers perspective of it, you get one shot, they get none.
mm.
Better than you getting one shot and them getting one
Two.
or two. Eventually,
Mm,
they got two,
mm.
one opportunity to score
Yeah, yeah.
that way. And I just, that kind of befuddled me. That
Mm,
I can't really think of any logic other than you're running something particularly special,
mm,
which would say, okay, we're gonna have a shot, but we're going to give you the ball back and give you the chance to have a shot.
mm.
Now, it might be that Cheshire are just so attuned not to using a full shot clock,
Yeah, maybe.
that they couldn't have been trusted to go slowly enough not to get a shot up early anyway, and Ben didn't trust them to roll it out to the end. But in that situation, certainly I'd be, giving the ball to Cam Holden and telling him to attack with about 5 seconds on the clock,
Yeah.
give you a chance of an offensive rebound, but not them the chance of getting back down the other end. Oh, that's bizarre. Keedy Johnson, maybe he went a little bit early, mate, but that time again, once you're in the last kind of 4 or 5 seconds, then I think you've got to take what you can because um, if you miss, it's unlikely they're going to get down the far end in that time.
It depends on whether I don't know whether Cheshire had another timeout to advance the ball because
Rarely do.
if the first shot had gone in there was 4 or 5 seconds
They
stopped.
didn't call one, did they?
No, but by the time the shot went in afterwards, I think that was the buzzer, wasn't it?
At the buzzer.
Yeah, I think so. So Johnson 28 points, 4 of 6 threes, 8 of 8 free throws. Walsh 4 of 8 threes, 19 points. Louis 11 points and 5 assists. Kristen 19, White 16, 5 of 8 shooting. Eitel Rock 15 points. But Cheshire only 9 points off turnovers, only 5 second chance points, and those are two numbers that are normally something that Cheshire get a lot of offense from.
Yeah, well, Cheshire and Bristol are very similar in the way that they play, and Bristol have a little bit more. I think probably have a little bit more structure to them in relation to the sets that they run. But they both play fast and they play quick and they get their shots up. I mean, the game ultimately, the 9 points comes down to the fact what you say that Johnson and Walsh shot 8 of 14 from
Mm,
three. And on their numbers, you'd expect them to shoot probably 5 of 14.
mm,
Should be like 36%. Well, they shot 8 of 14. That's 50%. That's your 9 points.
mm,
And there's a time whereby you've got to be aware that these guys are scoring or these
mm.
guys are shooting the ball well, and you've got to try and take that away and give them take something else. But yeah, Cheshire, it just struck a weird tone. The first 90 seconds of that game, taking out your two bigs and going and playing in a different direction, that kind of struck a weird kind of tone to me. I just didn't understand that. You know, give it
Uh,
5 minutes, give it 4 minutes.
uh,
Hmm.
let's go to the other game then. Sheffield Sharks 86, Caledonia Gladiators 71. Matthews was out with his hamstring problem for Sheffield. Gladiators new team
Well,
basically.
well,
Wilson
pound for
Frame.
pound, this may have been the least close 15-point game in modern BBL history.
Yeah, it might well have been. Wilson Frame, Kane, Dunbar in for Piers. Obviously, Jimenez is out as well at the minute. Almas, who seems to have been sidelined of late, into the starters. He hits a three on the opening play, and the Robbie Piers era is underway.
Yeah, let's just unpick a bit of that, shall we? Because there's a lot to unpick. Um, Firstly, we obviously talked about the kind of the organizational borderline dysfunction that there has been there, and they've made decisions at this point to basically not just to kind of pull up the carpet and put down a laminate, but to kind of build a Bob Mortimer, anybody,
Mm,
but to kind of knock down the roof as well and rebuild the whole thing halfway through a season, with no real time to kind of reconfigure much. In doing that, they've taken the decision to release three imports. So Stuckman, who's actually been probably the most impressive player. Um, Hill, who's gone off to Hungary, got a job, and Tomzik, who's only been there for a cup of coffee anyway.
mm,
So they've lost three imports. They've already, of course, previously to that lost Dubose, changed Dubose for Tomzik, and they started off with five imports. Barnes is still there, but didn't play in this game, albeit he was warming up.
mm,
So goodness knows what's going on there. And they brought in three guys, basically fresh, I assume, from G League tryouts, um, because they've been playing in the G League last year, but obviously they haven't got a gig there this year. Otherwise, they wouldn't be available.
mm.
Um, and they brought them in the middle of in December. In doing so, they've handicapped themselves because certainly if the rule is as it was when I was around,
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing.
you get nine registration of imports in a season. That's their nine.
Mm,
And certainly I've heard nothing to suggest that that rule has changed. I mean, the logic of that is that basically, no one wants it to be a league whereby teams chop and change every 3 weeks. In fact, nine is probably very generous.
mm,
I think I'd probably make it a little bit fewer if I could. But in any event, that means they're out of any realistic ability other than signing British players um, to kind of up and change the roster as well. So it's kind of a one fell swoop, kind of here we are.
yeah.
Now, the difficulty with bringing three guys in from the G League isn't so much the three guys from the G League who may be good, bad, or indifferent. It's the fact that they're having to play with, you know, players a number of players who've been there certainly since August, and a core who've been there for more than a year,
Mm,
2 years. So you're talking Malcolm, Jimenez, Onwas, Ali Hodzic, those
yeah.
guys, Whelan. So suddenly, now those guys have all been playing in a very specific way, in quite an ordered and structured way for a year,
Mm,
2 years maybe with Gareth. They've been trying to put a system in this year whereby the ball is moving, quite a continental system, which is the way they're playing. And that's now all effectively blown up
mm,
because you bring in a new point guard and you bring in a new wing and another forward as well. And your new point guard is a volume 6'6", 6'5", 6'6" volume shooter. And it took him 3.5 minutes in this game before he stepped behind the screen and chucked up his first 27-footer without a pass.
mm,
Now, I'm telling you that now. Now, whether that's right or wrong, I'm not judging that because he might be able to make those shots, right? But it's right or wrong. That is not the way that they've been doing it the past two
no,
years.
no.
And if they were doing it the last 2 years, you wouldn't be on the court,
Mm,
right? Particularly with Gareth, well, even with Gareth, but even with the Spanish guys, that's just not the way they've been. And that means that you've got this kind of hybrid setup whereby you've got new guys playing in trying to make a point, not make a point, that's the wrong way of putting it, trying to make a mark,
an impression.
an impression against players who've been there who are used to playing, for better or worse in a system.
Yeah.
Which is kind of why my immediate thought to all of this was they should have just ridden it out until till April, and then start. If you want to start again, you start again in the summer.
mm,
You want to sign Robbie Pierce or anybody else, and you want to get 6 Americans, you get your 6 Americans that you want. You want to play with 6 Americans, whatever. You do that because doing it halfway through the season is just fraught
mm,
with difficulties. And I thought those difficulties showed themselves in the first half in this game.
yeah.
They At one point it seemed to me that it was almost a competition as to who can shoot kind of the worst shot, because they didn't put up particularly good shots. There was no particular system running. Well, the three guys who just come in, there wouldn't be.
Mm,
Only scored one. Wilson Frames started. First impression, big guard who can handle the basketball, not going to get his shoulders past much, but can pass out and is looking to get his own shot. Um, Kane came in, looked like kind of a slithery type of wing player. You can play, can shoot the ball a little bit. Again, they all got their shots up, so you don't know precisely how well they can shoot it, but he made a couple and got the rim a couple of times. Dunbar didn't see much out of him at all. You've then got Fagbenle, who has now suddenly become the backup five instead of the wing player he's been for the past 3 months. So he comes in and basically spells Ali Hodzic instead of Barnes, who doesn't play. Hughes, the 7 footer, he doesn't play at all either.
mm,
Even when they're down 28, even in garbage time, these guys aren't getting in the game. And there wasn't much discernible direction from the sidelines either. The coach is obviously trying to figure out what he's got.
mm,
But overall, I mean, I think you said last week, good luck scouting that lot
mm, mm.
team. Didn't need to scout them, did he? Because they
No.
took them apart. I mean, Sheffield are probably the wrong team
Sheffield,
to
yeah,
them.
Sheffield are the worst team to play in that regard because they're just going to do what they do. After that, I mentioned the three. Sheffield then had the next 9 points. They had an 8-0 run later in the quarter, 24 uh, 11. And then end of the first quarter, again, there was another inexplicable one where Kane got his first score and then caught the ball, bounced it straight to whoever it was on the thing so that he could inbound it quickly. And Rotino hit a three on the buzzer as a result of it. And if you left it alone, time would have run out. So what
Yeah,
do you do?
it's nuts.
Uh,
I just think the whole vibe is just, it's going to take a lot of recovering there.
yeah.
The talent level, there obviously is a lot of talent in that gym when they're practicing.
Mm,
But I felt a little bit for Whelan. I just, they didn't think, there wasn't anybody setting down screens for him to come up and get the ball. No one was looking to him as an option. Um, and everybody seemed to be out there, on their own.
mm,
And you're 4.5 months into the season, so it shouldn't be that way. But it is by necessity because that's the way that they've played. Um, I'm not quite sure where they go from there. I mean, I
no.
forget the second half. Sheffield just stopped.
Yeah.
Sheffield got, yeah, and I'm not sure where they go from there. And as I say, I might be entirely wrong, but I didn't see anything out of the three American guys that would have at this point demonstrated to me that that was sufficient to blow up your whole team for.
Mm,
I appreciate they have been struggling. And there's an argument to say, well, we can't keep going on the way we are because we're going to end up, 10 and 24, it's a wasted season, so we may as well swing for the fences.
mm,
But you bring in guys who haven't played for a while. You bring them in the mid-season against some good teams where there's no mugs.
mm,
And I didn't like particularly I thought there was a lack of interaction between the new guys and the players who'd been there for a while. There's a couple of times you saw one Fraser Malcolm saying something to one of the new guys and kind of walk past him. And that might be me being hypersensitive because I'm looking for it,
mm.
um, as opposed to it actually being there. But they're kind of boxed in now. This has to work.
Yeah, it has to work. Sheffield 58 points at half time, which is their most in exactly 4 years. They've had 60 against Surrey 4 years uh, ago on the 6th of December. They also had a 58 against Thames Valley in 2023, but don't count that. I do count it, but I discount it.
Yeah.
And as you say, nothing happened in the second half worth really talking about.
All I'll
Uh,
say is that Sheffield, just not to entirely ignore them. Chapman probably quite rightly won the Player of the Month, albeit
mm,
know how much disdain I have for those awards. Anyway,
What, now that they're expertly chosen, now that we have a panel of experts
really,
well, there's a fan vote and then there's an expert vote where they get experts in to vote.
really, really
Yeah,
okay. Well, no one's ever asked, but never mind. No, but of course, Chapman had the game after he won the Player of the Month, whereby he wasn't there.
yeah,
No, and actually, he wasn't great in that game.
no.
Um, well, maybe that was that Sunday's game. I might
No,
actually
no, he was 4 of 14 in this game.
4-14 in this game. But I mean, Sheffield are really solid now. They're really solid now. They're going to get tested in due course,
Yeah,
like everybody else is.
yeah,
But they got, out of the teams that have kind of upped their budget a little bit this year, you can see Sheffield has been spent well.
yeah,
Manchester's been spent,
yeah,
and Caledonia's has been spent twice.
yeah.
And so Sheffield, I think, have to be. And I'm not saying that in a denigrating way up their budget. They have signed players from better leagues and from with better pedigree
Mm,
than they have in the past. And they're in a new arena, which gives you a buzz, and they've got a new owner,
mm,
who's probably put a little bit more in, not a lot more. You're not talking London money,
mm.
um, but at the moment you would say that it's all been, it's
Worth
look
it.
invested. Well, look, what is worth in British
Yeah, yeah.
basketball? You
Well,
know what I mean? What was that Euro Cup win for
the
Wimbledon?
product on the court looks
Is
good.
looks like
Yeah,
it should.
looks like a good team that will be there or thereabouts winning stuff this year.
Yes,
So,
I think
yeah,
that's right.
therefore it's worth it in that
Yeah.
regard. Clay, 23 points, 9 rebounds. Chapman, 19.7 rebounds. Nixon, 15 points and 7 rebounds. Onwas, 18.7 rebounds. Kane, 15. Whelan, 14 points and 8 rebounds. They shot 35% from the floor and 28% from three.
Here's the thing: out of those 28% from three, Prince almost made 4 out of 8.
Mm,
Right, and Prince almost, there's a lot to like about Prince almost, but if you're not going to be expecting him to be shooting 50% the rest of the season from the 3-point line,
no.
and the reality is he got his shots up because everybody else was getting their shots up.
Mm,
And he didn't want to be the one left behind. And they have a real issue, and they're going to have to try and develop a team concept out of somewhere. And I don't know how you do that, doing what they've done. Kind of cutting all those guys. Even if they'd kept, they've only got 5 imports. So even if they, because it's the three new guys, it's Barnes and Onwas, isn't it?
mm,
So even if they kept Hill, kept the point guard, you could just something to kind of provide a little bit of um, continuity, even though Hill's not been great. He would have given you a little bit of continuity with the group. Now you've just put the ball in the hands of somebody who's never been there. It's
mm,
all a bit strange.
mm. And let's go to the other trophy semi-final. Newcastle Eagles 95, Leicester Riders 91. Am I a prisoner of the moment here, Dave, or are Newcastle turning into the team that either gets up big and gives away a lead or gets down big and gets it back? It feels like it's happening every week now. It's happened 3 times in a week, I think.
Well, I think they've struggled to put 40 minutes together, would be fair, but then again, they're playing against good teams, and at the minute they're 15-4.
Mm,
And I think I was looking back at these two teams, um, they're both sneakily having really good seasons,
mm,
really, really good seasons. Leicester have been beaten by one team this year, that's
mm,
Sheffield. Newcastle beaten by Cheshire early twice in a meaningless game against Manchester, and then a short-handed game at London.
mm,
In the meantime, they've won 5 games in Europe as well. So that's it. Yeah, I think Leicester before this game, what, 9-2, Newcastle 14-4.
mm,
Right now, I mean, that's two pretty solid basketball teams. And I
mm,
don't think it was realistic in this game to kind of expect any team to win by 20. And I wasn't expecting that even when Newcastle went up in the first half. But it's kind of what interests. I mean, the first legs of these games I always kind of watch with a degree of kind of detached indifference, because having been there so many times, you know that they will all walk off and we're all going to meet up again in 2 weeks' time. And actually, I think the fact that there's a 2 week gap between the games actually probably mitigates any kind of momentum swing or anything like that. I
mm,
think this is so far gone that by the time they get around to playing the next game, I think it'll just be start all over again.
The momentum might come from the league game in between, mightn't it?
Yeah, maybe, but then again, if Newcastle win that, then you're thinking, can they beat Leicester three times in a row? I'm
Mm.
thinking, I mean, that's hard, Um, it might do, but basically, the both teams I think showed who they are, and they also kind of showed their flaws at the same time. Leicester, Leicester are playing with kind of six and a half effective players at the moment, and their bench is really struggling. And Rob isn't blending their bench in with the starters because he doesn't want to disrupt the flow that the starters have got, which has resulted in this game, Hunter playing 37 minutes, Jackson playing 36 minutes, Abercrombie playing about 36 minutes, something like that. And when the bench comes on kind of en masse at the beginning of the second quarter, the whole thing went south very quickly for them. But with the starting five on, they're as good as anybody.
Mm.
So in the short term, it's probably going to help them that they're so good at the starting five, the spacing and the movement. And when Hunter plays like that in particular, they're really good. In the long run, they are susceptible to potential, a couple of key injuries could really hurt them. Um, so that's Newcastle are kind of the opposite. They're kind of doing it by committee, because you had on just on Tuesday night, Aikens and Okoro just carried them to victory, and then 3 days later, possibly with the adrenaline rush of that, neither of them were particularly effective in this game.
Mm.
And so it's harder to kind of figure out who Newcastle's lineups are going to be because they're playing nine guys and they're not really playing them in any kind of specific he's playing with him or he's playing with him situation. Um, and watching how that and what happened was in the first half, Newcastle's energy in their defense in particular was high and
Yeah,
less ready for it.
forcing turnovers, Newcastle. They led by 6 in the first quarter. Shelton got it back. It was a 2-point game after one. Then Alan Aikens, James Ward Hibbett hit threes. Eagles scored 14 points in a row to lead 39 35. And it basically stayed comfortable then until
25,
5 minutes to go.
39,
Did I say 35? Sorry, 39-25.
Right. Um, Comfortable in relation to winning the game. I don't think I thought the game changed at half time. I mean, Newcastle scored like what 38 points in the second quarter.
Mm,
They got into a rhythm. They created turnovers. Their energy was good. They were knocking down shots, and it was all coming from different areas, which meant that it was tough for Leicester to do anything about it. But primarily, it was about their defense. They defended the rim well, and they challenged shots, and Jackson really didn't get going that much. Beginning the second half, it changed because Leicester decided that they were going to get into the paint, and they were going to get in the paint via the screen and roll. Because the one thing Newcastle did well in this game, and they clearly set out to do, was to take away catch and shoot threes from Abercrombie, Johnson, and Wright. Okay. Jackson to a certain degree as well. So by doing that, that means that you're staying closer to those guys on the perimeter. That means you're effectively playing 2-on-2 in the middle in your screen roll. And that's where Thompson was effective in getting the basketball and when Hunter was able to get him the basketball. And then once they got that going, they kind of Jackson got going off little cuts and they scored with far too much regularity at the beginning of the third quarter. And whilst I think the game went from maybe 17 to about 9 when Mark called a timeout with about 3 minutes to go in the third quarter, Leicester had basically scored every time down until then.
mm,
And the rhythm that they were in kind of carried on. And Newcastle's defense, which has carried them in the first half with forcing those turnovers, wasn't able to be as impactful in the second half because the way Leicester played, Newcastle didn't adjust particularly well to that. And that then stagnated them because they couldn't get out in transition. And so the tempo of the game was Leicester's.
mm,
So I thought the tempo of the game in the first half was Newcastle, the tempo of the game in the second half was Leicester. Now, against that, Leicester couldn't put the bench in.
mm,
Hunter played the whole second half. Jackson played the whole second half. Thompson played virtually the whole second half. He came halfway through the fourth quarter for a couple of minutes. And then they had kind of Wright. At one point, they had Wright and Johnson on at the same time, who were kind of spacing the floor as shooters as well when they wanted to rest Abercrombie. So they were playing basically with six guys. And I thought Hunter was great because he played 37 minutes, but he made big shots that, early on in the season you weren't sure he was going to make. And you can see he's got that kind of steeliness about him, that toughness about him to bring them close. So it got to nine, then it kind of hovered around 9 or 10 till about the 5 minute mark. Then Leicester made a little run.
So it's 87-76 with 5 minutes to go. Then Wright 3, Hunter 3, Leicester with a 10-2 run to make it 89-86. 2.5 minutes to go. Wright with the chase down block on
Yeah, that was a great
James.
play. That was a great play.
Wright is a sneaky shot blocker. He had another big block earlier in the
He
season.
did.
It doesn't look like he could do any of that, but he's
Well, that's timing, isn't it? If
yeah,
with the thing with the chase down, you might not be great at vertical, but if you can time the chase down to get
yeah,
there, and it was James who is probably not going to out sprint you, but he's going to use his body normally. It's a great play, and it was a 5 point swing because he took
yeah.
away.
Hunter comes down and hits it
Yeah, but
free.
also the thing with Wright is they got the ball to Wright, and he made a great pass to Hunter
Mm,
in rhythm in transition. Hunter pulls up for a confident three. A confident three because everything had been going in for them in the second
mm,
half, and the rhythm of the game had changed. So that changed from like a 6 point game to a 1 point game. Um, Almost like that.
mm.
And then it was kind of back and forth. Who's going to make the last shot? Who's going to get a stop?
Look, I've got it written down. We'll just quickly run through the play. So it's 90-89 after that three. Jackson underneath makes it 92. Knight underneath makes it 92-89. Other end, Jackson finds Thompson 92-91. James then drops a shoulder call for an offensive foul, but Hunter turns the ball over on a bad pass. Knight and Wright both miss threes, and then a great cross-court pass from Alan Ikens with 20 seconds to go to Knight for 3:95-91.
Yeah, I mean, Alan Hikins just has to be on the court at the end. He just makes the crazy thing about Newcastle is I'd say they won 15 games. I would say that maybe a couple on the road in four of them being against Caledonia.
Mm,
Okay, maybe a couple of them on the road in Caledonia. Maybe they've been comfortable at the end, but the vast majority of the games they've played, they have been competitive games with 3 minutes to go,
yeah, yeah.
and they keep finding a way to win. And I don't know if that is going to be a regression to the mean, whereby eventually they're going to stop finding the way to win because the best teams are meant to blow teams out.
Mm,
If you're a best team, this is
yeah,
the thing.
yeah.
You can't quite get I can't quite get my head around with Newcastle. They're 15-4 and they keep winning these games, but they keep winning games with their poise and their will at the end of games, as opposed to kind of and they don't even still even now, they're playing they're 15-4 with a British point guard who's averaging like seven a game.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Not the
we
way
didn't mention the fact that Bynum has gone.
Bynum's gone, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they'll be looking to replace him in due course as well because he got an import spare. And obviously Bynum wasn't what Mark needed,
Mm,
despite his college resume. But you've got a British point guard who's averaging only about 7 or 8 points a game, who's leading that team to be 15-4. That's not historically the way
mm.
that you win in this league.
No.
It's in fact it's an outlier. So the question is, it's like when you see something you haven't seen before, is it real?
Yeah.
How sustainable is it? Because you're following new ground. Um, so yeah, it's a weird one. They just keep winning close games, and they seem to have that, and that confidence and that's maybe
It's
comes.
not a bad habit to have, but as you say, you'd rather win a few not close ones.
You would. So yeah, and I think the European stuff, and this is with Bristol, I think what the European stuff brings is experience and togetherness.
Mm,
It may take a toll on the bodies, and that might pay as the season goes on. But Newcastle played 19 games and Leicester played 12.
mm,
Now that's like 50%
mm.
more than 50% more. So does that help? And the same with Bristol and Cheshire. Bristol have played all those European games, Cheshire haven't. Does that mean that you're more
Cheshire did play
battle?
in the north,
They
obviously.
did. They got two more
There's an
games.
extra two
Yeah, so it's
games.
not as big a thing. But does it mean that you're more battle hardened
Mm,
at this point of the season?
maybe.
That's a
Yeah.
benefit. So I thought it was really, yeah, I thought it was a fascinating game. They played each other three more times in the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks because they played just after Christmas as well. And it's going to be interesting watching how the teams adjust to each other. But I thought the night was very good for Newcastle. Well, Jackson was really good for um, Leicester. Knight carried Newcastle at times in this game.
Yeah.
And he's beginning to get
Particularly early, I thought.
more and more comfortable. You can see, you can just kind of see it in him. His defense is better, and he just seems to be more and more comfortable in what they're doing. So overall, yeah, 4 point game start again in 40 minutes. It could be sort of what 2 weeks
Yeah.
time again.
Jackson, Eagles used foul. Let's score timeout. Jackson missed 17 footers to win the game.
Yeah, but he
Um,
last shot.
hey,
He
they
got the
do,
last shot.
yeah, yeah, they
You
did,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Knight 23, Ward Hibbert 18, James 16. 48 points for the starters, 47 points for the bench.
Yeah.
Jackson 24, Hunter 19 points, 11 assists, Thompson 18 points and 14 rebounds.
What's the bench? What was the starters bench on
Oh,
Leicester?
I didn't write it down, but there
Yes, had
wasn't
something 80
much.
to
Yeah,
11 or something like that, and
yeah,
maybe Wright had a few.
yeah,
So Wright and Shelton maybe, so probably about
yeah,
76 to 15.
yeah.
And that's the difference in your teams
Mm,
ultimately. And there's no right way or wrong way.
no,
It'll be
because
interesting.
you could almost argue that if you've got 47 points off the bench, have you started the wrong players?
Yeah. Or alternatively, it's just that whoever we start is going to contribute.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas with and therefore you're not as worried about combinations because they're
yeah,
getting
yeah,
reps in the extra games that they've played.
yeah.
In relation to Leicester, you could say to Leicester, well, should you not try and maybe stagger your bench players, put a couple, get something out of your bench players
Mm,
it'll be easier for them with the starters, but
yeah.
then you might blow the rhythm that your starters have got.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the interesting thing of there would I can't remember who was against now, but they obviously struggled. The bench struggled against Sheffield, and then they did all right. Well, it was Manchester, was it? And then
Yeah.
might be just because it's Manchester, and then struggled a bit against
I mean,
Newcastle.
it's kind of weird. I mean, it's weird watching Connor play 2.5 minutes. I'll be honest. That is, I mean, I'm surprised that they haven't tried to put maybe Connor on with Hunter at a certain point. And,
Mm,
I know it leaves them small and it's a bigger league now at the guard spot. So that might be it. But, you'd think you can find a way of getting something out of Connor. Brooks hasn't really shown much. Bowman, has to be able to play now. It's his third year,
mm,
you know. And I'm not questioning the coach because I know the coach knows what he's doing.
mm,
He's doing what he needs to do to win the game because he's won so many of them before. So it's not a question of he should be playing. It's like, it's got to be on the player to make himself not playable.
mm,
And but they put Johnson in the starting lineup. I think that helps. I think that helps him because I think Wright is a guy who plugs and plays, and Wright can take more of the kind of responsibility with the bench. But But no, they're gonna have to find something.
mm,
Shelton's a backup five, and he's going to play the minutes that Thompson doesn't play. But you don't really want to take Thompson off the court, so that leaves you with kind of six guys in Shelton at the moment who are really playing a part.
mm,
And as I say, Hunter was really good in this game. He really. I didn't think he had that level of savvy in him. It's the first time you see someone up front. You know,
mm.
when you see him in the arena, it's different to seeing him on the
It
telly.
is, yeah.
And I just thought they're desperate for him not to go down. He has to be healthy the whole season, no
Uh,
question.
let's come to Sunday. Sheffield Sharks 93, Surrey 89ers 85. Brown gone for Surrey. Um, Sheffield
Oh,
10
is
of
it?
the yeah, yeah,
All
they
right,
yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
realize it. I missed that. All right,
yeah,
that kind of makes sense. I mean, I wonder if they're going to surprise they waited that long. I wonder what they're going to do.
mm,
Interesting. So,
we'll see.
I've got an idea.
Sheffield 10 of the first 12 points to lead 10-2. Surrey did get it back to a point. Sheffield another 11-0 run around the first quarter break to 38-26.
Yeah, it was. I don't mean this disparagingly. It was a very sorry game. This they,
Mm,
they never went away. They irritated
yeah.
Sheffield. It irritated Atiba because he was frustrated that he wasn't getting away. They weren't getting away. They weren't,
Yeah.
weren't putting the game away. Because Sheffield was scoring the ball comfortably.
Mm,
Um, Surrey's perimeter defense was unimpressive.
mm,
They have two small guards anyway, so it's hard for them to. I appreciate it's hard for them to challenge much, but they have to get up into people.
mm,
If you're going to be little, you got to be little and quick. And I thought that the shots that Sheffield got, and Sheffield got good ball movement and pristine spacing, but some of the shots that they got are shots that are right in the middle of your scouting report. Rod Glasgow is right on your scouting report as to shooting those shots.
mm,
He's knocking them down. So is Drake Jeffries. And they're getting kind of open looks. And when Prentice Nixon, makes four in a row at the beginning of the game, and they're all, Prentice Nixon is your hand down, man down guy. If you put your hand down on him,
Mm,
he's just rising up and shooting it from the triple threat position, which is down by you. There keeps the ball down by his kind of hip, raises up and shoots it. And they guarded him like they'd never seen him play before. I mean, there was when Cholovinskas came on, he just kind of stood in front of him like he was an under 18, and Nixon took one look at him, rose up and shot it.
mm,
And it's not defense just to be standing in front of somebody. You've got to be doing something to take them out of what they want to do. And I thought, I think they had 45 points, maybe Sheffield by halfway through the second quarter,
yeah, yeah.
which you can't
The league,
survive on.
yeah, the league peaked at 17 at that point, but Surrey did have a 15 4 run, so it was 48 points at that point. 15-4 run to cut it to 52-46 just before halftime.
Which is why I say it was a very sorry game because
Yeah,
Surrey don't do is they don't stop scoring, they don't go away, they keep running the stuff that they're going to run,
it was
and
a
they
bit
score.
annoying for those of us who had to turn off in the third quarter because I was thinking this if this is a blowout, I don't have to then go home and watch the fourth quarter.
Yes.
But there you go. Half time, by the way, Nixon, Groves, and Glasgow combined for 17 of 22 shooting for 42 points.
Yeah, and they're all shooting standstill jump shots. Nixon maybe made one move to his left where he shot his patented 15-footer. He's not formally patented it, but it's a good
Mm,
free. And Rod shot the ball off the catch and shot the ball off his one dribble, and then he got into a rhythm, so he got a little floater going as well. And Groves, every time Groves is pick and popping, if you don't know he's there, if you're not switching on Groves, you've got a big problem.
mm,
He's just popping to the top of the key, a little bit like Long does for Newcastle.
mm,
Boom, ping, shot, good. Groves is a really, really good shooter, 47% in college. So yeah, yeah, and on top of that, I think the second play of the game, I remember watching them. They gave up his right hand, and he made the two times in a row, and it's like this guy's been playing for 4 months now. He barely dribbles with his left hand. And you're
mm,
giving up right hand drives. I just didn't off the catch, which isn't good. So I thought their attention to detail wasn't there, but offensively, they are always going to be solid,
mm,
and they stayed solid, and that kept Sheffield honest because Sheffield also do go through these little stints whereby they miss.
mm. Well, they briefly led by 12 in the third quarter. It was pretty close for most of the second half. Let's get to the end. 3 minutes ago, Gooden drive to the basket, cut it to 85 83. 151 to go. Delicate fouls out on a bump before he did block the shot, but he bumped him on the drive.
Yeah, that was a good call. There was one
Kingsley.
before that which you may not have seen, where Mervyn James went up and swatted Sheffield. I can't remember which Sheffield guy who didn't get off the ground, which was called a foul, which made me think that we should just ban defense. Yeah. I mean, I just looked at it and thought, you're joking. This guy James is like 6 feet off the ground, and he's all ball, and you're saying he's
Yeah,
got a push. I mean, what's he meant to do?
yeah, yeah,
That call on the Delicate was a good call because he
yeah.
did. You saw it on the
You
baseline.
saw it on the baseline camera.
But the Mervyn James one. I mean, when you see every player on the team go,
Yeah.
that, you just know as a ref, you must want to just swallow up, because you must be thinking, oh, Christ.
Clay 1 or 2 from the free throw line. Lawrence then misses a three. Sharks with a 24-second violation. Ray then misses a three. And 26 seconds to go. Chapman rather buys a three-shot foul. And that was basically it. With
Yeah.
those two,
No.
three, three, it was 2 or 3. It's a
Can't-
foul, but he turned it into a shot. I don't
Yeah,
think he was
yeah,
going
that's
to
what I mean.
shoot
Yeah,
it
it
if
was a
it was a
foul. I
foul.
can't think. I don't remember thinking there's a bad call in there.
Yeah,
So no.
it wasn't a bad call. It was just he realised the foul was coming and just sort of threw it to get
Yeah,
three shots out of it. So
yeah.
it's a good play by
Yeah.
him.
So I think in Sheffield you saw kind of little stints of this is getting a bit too easy in relation to the way that they've been playing, and I thought, and that's the worst. Surrey is the worst team to play like that against.
Mm,
I thought Clay was very good again. He's really settling into that kind of role as the five man in kind of 4 out offense because he can attack one on one as well when he gets a
mm,
chance. He's kind of got quick feet and he's got decent handles. Um, Hunt was conversely, Hunt was very good and efficient.
mm. Yeah.
Sorry, but he's again playing as a five instead of, so they can't play him with a Delican at the moment. They're basically splitting minutes, so you can only get 18 minutes out of him. But his stretch five play was really good, and he's got some nice finishing in the screen role. But Overall, I just thought it ultimately Surrey's first half. You give up 45 points on the road in the first 15 minutes to a bunch of 3-point shooters who are 3-point shooters. Then it don't matter how well you play the rest of the way, you're going to struggle to win. They're going to be comfortable that they're going to get their shots when they need them, and I thought they did.
They did, yeah. Nixon, 22 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. Groves, 8 of 12 shooting in the end for 21 points. Glasgow, 6 of 7 shooting for 14 points. James, 17. Ray, 17. Hunt, 6 of 8 for 13 points. And finally, Cheshire Phoenix, one.
Sorry, just on that,
Yeah.
Dan, just on that one. I assume they're going to be signing a wing because Josh Steele was over 3 in 31 minutes in this game, and Josh Steele is a solid role player in the league.
Mm,
But they're going to need more out of
mm,
that spot than 0 3 in 31 minutes. And obviously, Josh might make 3 or 4 shots the next game, but even then, he's a supplementary kind of player who will, you know, score when he has to. But that kind of Paddy Wang type player
mm,
is much needed on that team. That give him a little bit of boost of athleticism and kind of wing scoring, kind of your Zach Jackson Ward Hibbert type player. Who
mm.
can give him a bit of everything.
Cheshire Phoenix 102, Bristol Flyers 108. So Bristol win 200 to 185 on aggregate. No Austin still, no Louis after that injury in the uh, first leg.
Oh, sorry. Also on Bristol, can we just take Kendall Lewis off the spiral watch?
Yeah.
Got a text
Yeah.
saying apparently Kendall Lewis had been home for the break for a family trip, and as such that he didn't have his legs. That's why he only played 10 minutes. So thanks, guys. He is officially off the spiral watch.
Yeah.
Given the way he's playing, I think I'd have figured it out anyway.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show: don't ever believe all the rubbish you hear on.
Yeah.
And and,
Just
and
because it
the,
just
the
because it
problem
looks a bit odd doesn't mean it's on.
exactly the problem with basically proffering opinions for nothing is that sometimes those opinions are going to be
Ill
honestly
informed.
honestly held but ill-informed because
Yeah.
the one thing that I think we both kind of have taken a view on this is that we're not reporters, and I'm not
No.
going to ask somebody to give details because they might not want to. And I
Yeah.
think if you start asking people for stuff and information, it changes the whole dynamic of this.
Yeah.
That far better just saying this is what I see. This
Yeah.
is what everybody else can see as well if they look.
Yeah.
This might be right. This might be wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah. Apologies to Kendall. Congratulations on whatever family news he has. And
I think he's gone public with it, has he not?
does he not? The
I think he
baby.
has. I think he has. Anyway,
Oh, well, anyway.
look on
Uh,
social media, people. I'm sure it'll be there. Um, the other one, Nick Burns said to me, was asking me about talking to me after the game about the fake comebacks that you talk
yeah.
about, and it did make me wonder. Were there fake comebacks when you were on the bench, Dave, or can you only see these now? Do all because he's like none of these fake comebacks feel like fake when you're sat there and the other team's
Oh, he's
coming back.
100%. He's absolutely 100%. The every game is as a coach, every game is comebackable.
Yeah,
Yeah, because um the fear is that you're losing and it's your fault.
yeah.
And you are the ones who have to change it. But when I'm talking about fake comebacks on the bench, I am plugging in the fact that they've got coaches in the winning team who knows what's going on that it happened.
Yeah.
So part of that, part of that is me understanding that there's going to be a counter to the fake
Yeah,
comeback,
yeah.
unless a team absolutely falls apart. But no, absolutely, when you're on the
Yeah.
bench, every comeback's a real comeback. Every basket's a problem. If you're in Bristol, Jesus Christ, then we could be up 35 in Bristol, and I think I'm
Yeah.
and you just and
You were once, weren't you?
I was,
Weren't
yeah,
you?
but not
Yeah,
quite. But yeah,
in a playoff game or something.
no, we weren't up that many in that
Yeah,
game. We were up 27, yeah, in a half. I think 27 at half time, or
yeah,
before half time, and they came right back to like 2 points down for the second leg.
yeah,
It was the first leg. And also in the first leg of games, we're getting to that. I mean, in the first leg, you just want to get out of the gym.
yeah,
You're up 10, you want to get out of the gym. And that's a very
yeah,
difficult mentality to be in.
yeah,
Because if you're particularly on the road, if you're at home, you want to pile it on. But if you're on
yeah,
the road, you just want to get out.
yeah.
Um, so it's
So,
weird. But he's right though. He's right about the fake comeback. It's
yeah,
absolutely spot on. There is no
yeah.
such thing as when you're involved. But
So, traded scores for the first 7 minutes, and Keely Johnson scored 7 in a row, 19-28, the lead, so doubled on aggregate.
Yeah. Cheshire came out as I would have expected. They kind of came out full of adrenaline. And I've been in that situation before. Oh, by the way, you said 10 or 12 years of two-legged games. Give me a break, Dan. It's 15 at least.
What, since they came back?
Yes. Yeah. I remember
Is
one
it,
at the
is it
arena with Tony G and Olu Babalola playing for Everton Tigers.
okay? They
2008.
went away for a long time, and then
Yeah.
they came back for.
15 or
I
16.
seem to remember debating. It was at Loughborough in a second leg. So how long ago is it since Loughborough? Debating with somebody whether that was a good idea or a bad idea, and I was saying it was a bad idea at the time because they'd only just come back. So how long ago since Leicester played at Loughborough? It was a long time ago, that wasn't it? I don't know.
No,
You
anyway,
carry on, carry on.
that's the Metro Radio Arena. There was a Metro Radio Arena. That's 2008. So as a historian of the game,
Get
coming
it
out with
right.
coming out with a vague 10 to 12 years, I have to say
Yeah.
I found that as despicable as the hyperbole you've just pulled me up. This is we expect rigor with statistics. Yeah, so the Cheshire came out like we did at times when we were down, and it never really worked well if you come up with too much kind of attention, too much intensity.
2008-9 they came back.
There you go. That's per 15 years, 16
Mm.
years. Um, and they missed. I thought that'll be a year. That was the Everton Tigers year. Kevin Bell. It was before Everton Tigers got Andre Smith. It was Kevin Bell that year. He was a point guard, and they beat Newcastle when Newcastle were down.
90, 97-86 I have in a second leg at Greenbank,
Yeah,
Everton against Newcastle. 2008 that was. December 2008. Is that the one you're
as a
talking about?
co-champion, that was
No,
that.
there's another one in 2010 where Newcastle won 91-96 at Greenbank in a second leg trophy semi-final. Is that it?
I think I remember that one.
Or there's May 2010, Newcastle 79, Everton 95. That was a playoff semi-final second leg.
Yeah, that was Trey Moore. Tony G came back and beat us.
What
Uh,
about 114-85 Newcastle lost to Mersey, Dave? What about that one, 2010?
oh, no,
74-77?
that wasn't the one that chased the
You
ref.
played a lot of second legs against
We
Mersey,
did,
didn't
we
you?
did, I absolutely. No, the 114.85 was when Joe Chapman did his foot on the way back. We had some heart to hearts on the bus on the way back. Joe Chapman did his foot in that game, and that was Tony G's team with Andrew Sullivan, Andy Thompson, and co. And they just hammered us that year. We had Trey and Joe and Kadiri that year. And we struggled for a period of time to beat them. In fact, I struggled for most of the time to beat them. There was certainly one, and there was a league game where we ended up chasing the refs off, which I've never done again. I'm quite proud I never did it again. I wasn't very proud of it at the time, albeit the refs were awful. So getting back to the point,
Yeah.
in a couple of those games, and particularly one I remember when I wasn't even on the bench at the arena with where Tony Fab and Tony G were going against it as well, the Kevin Bell game, playoff game that was. Newcastle were kind of down 10 and they came out and absolutely played with incredible amount of intensity, and it was counterproductive
Mm,
because they made all the plays you meant to make. They got steals, they got rebounds, but they couldn't finish. They were too tense and they burnt themselves out,
mm,
right? And so suddenly after all that effort, 15 minutes less, Everton are up two, and it's like, oh, what have we got now? You're done. And in this game, I thought Cheshire came out with a ton of energy, offensive rebounds. They were throwing up threes, but they weren't making them. It
mm,
was almost like they were looking. It was almost like each shot was weighing them down. Each shot was a 9 point shot.
mm,
But they hadn't got that out of their heads, and that just allowed Bristol to kind of get a foothold. And and the problem was Bristol stopped Bristol. They couldn't stop Bristol.
mm,
Couldn't stop Bristol scoring, and Bristol are one of the teams that can score in transition on you. Cheshire, we've talked about Cheshire gambling in the past.
mm,
Cheshire's defense gambles, and they commit fouls that they shouldn't commit, and they got killed for it in this game.
mm. I'll just quickly do the run, then I'll pick up that. The Holden Kristen Rock threes had Knicks ahead by four in the second quarter. It was level at halftime, and then from 57-56, Bristol had a 20-3 run to lead 61-86. That was basically the tie. They did make a run, they did get it to four, but they were only ever really going to win the game from that position, not the tie.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
the fouls thing is interesting because obviously was it Hunter last week had a ton of free throws? Keedy Johnson set a record for most free throws in a game since 2008 without missing a free throw, 17 of 17 going past Brad Wisbicki,
Remember?
Javian Hamlet, and
Yeah.
Ramon Fletcher, which is an interesting
Humble.
trio.
Yeah, you wouldn't. Yeah, difficult to guard those three
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah.
on the court at the same time. I would have thought. Yeah.
But yeah, the Cheshire thing and the fouls and the amount of free throws, because obviously Leicester beat them last week with a lot of free throws, and
And
essentially
when they commit fouls away from the basket, they commit fouls when they're in the penalty, and they commit. They reach a lot, and they don't move. I'm not quite sure individually. They're looking for steals. They want to get out and run.
there
You
were a
know,
few in this game I thought that were they were a little harshly done to, but I think in some ways it's again it's the stylistically if you're
I thought.
pressuring like that, you can get called for it.
Well, I think the problem is if you're pressuring like that and you haven't got a strategy as to how you're going to guard somebody as quick as Keedy Johnson, you're getting
Mm,
caught for it. The reality is, they shot 28 foul shots maybe, and Keedy shot 17 of them.
yeah,
That
yeah.
suggests not that that suggests that they're not fouling indiscriminately. They're fouling guys who they can't guard.
Mm,
Everybody else, nobody else in that Bristol team, with maybe Walsh, but he's kind of different because he's kind of steam, he's kind of runaway train as opposed to quickness. If you know what I mean? He's
mm,
downhill guy. Everybody, no one else in that Bristol team is really going to put the ball on the floor and take you to the rim. Just like no one else on Leicester is really going to do what Hunter does,
mm,
and or no one else in Newcastle is going to do what Okoro does. And every time he comes off a horns or comes off a screen, then the big guy is late and or they're reaching down on the ball, they're fouling him.
mm.
You've got to decide what you're going to give up with him, and they didn't. They got the one call that we saw from the baseline where Lewis discarded Atwood maybe.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, with one hand. I didn't see it first time, but on the camera, yeah, it was an offensive foul.
Mm,
But I thought that you weren't sure about the kind of the holding foul where he was in the landing space.
yeah,
But I thought that was a reasonable call.
yeah.
The
It was
Johnson.
only because he'd actually landed first before was it Johnson had gone up. So it's that
Yeah,
thing
I think it
of
was very borderline. Rest of it.
yeah, it's that thing
I think
of well, is he in the space and he's actually landed?
did he get there first on that? But
Yeah,
I
it was
think
one of those.
where's the shooting motion start and where's it finish?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
As a ref, I can understand why you would call that.
The other thing I think that ired the fans was there was three or four what Azania likes to call as a patient whistle, and I think
Uh,
that's the thing where fans think there's no foul, and then there's a foul called,
yeah.
and then they go mad. Whereas if you blow the quick whistle, it's almost like, well, the whistle happened as soon as the contact, so therefore it must have been a foul. There was a couple of late ones which really,
The problem for Cheshire is it's a trend. This isn't a one-off thing. You can't, it's a trend. And you said it best in the end of the third quarter. They cracked in that game.
mm,
Now, once you've cracked, you can uncrack to a certain degree, but it's all for show. It's your fear to come back again.
mm.
And Bristol didn't really finish the game off with the degree of appropriate fear that I thought they should have had, with a couple of the plays and the turnover.
Andreas had it. Andreas had it.
Andreas might have had it. Nick might
He
have had
was
it, but the players
shouting it.
But the player, I mean, they
Yeah,
really, that it was a good job. The game wasn't 5 more minutes, put it
yeah,
that way.
yeah,
But even then, Cheshire couldn't, even when they got that kind of steal or turnover, they couldn't quite make that play. But you can't give up 108. You
yeah,
can't 55, and you can't be giving Keedy Johnson 17 foul shots. He had 28 points. He had 17 of them on the foul line.
yeah,
And you're not telling me that they're all because of Backles, are they? They're because he is one of the quickest players in the league, and you have to be extremely disciplined to defend him. And that's where they've lost five in a row now,
mm,
5 in
yeah,
a row.
yeah, yeah.
Eventually, that's where, and they play good teams. So the five losses are against, the Bristol twice,
Leicester,
London,
London,
Leicester, Newcastle.
Newcastle.
Yeah. So that's they play good teams. So it's not like they're falling apart, and they've not been blown out really in any of those games. But they're losing the details.
Mm,
If you lose the details, then eventually you crack, and they did crack in this game.
mm,
And holding that play 40 minutes in this game, I didn't think. I mean, I thought Bristol did outplay them from a discipline perspective. I didn't particularly like the way Bristol guarded them. I thought Cheshire got his number of threes. I thought Holden got his 10 assists, which is
mm,
generally, if Holden gets 20 and 10, then you're going to lose.
Nearly
But
had 30 in 10.
no, yeah, 30 and 10, and that's, so that's, if you're giving them a lot of those 10 over 3-point shots, that's probably
Mm,
six, seven of them, that probably gives them responsibility for about 58 points,
mm,
and if that's a tough thing to win if he's doing that. So I didn't think Bristol's defense was brilliant, but what I will say is, I think Andreas said it in the little clips that they showed, they were tougher.
mm.
And they stayed together and they didn't crack. And what I will say is, that's this is why I come back to the EMBL thing in the European games. I think that's what Newcastle have as well. They have that kind of toughness.
Well, it's
Uh,
some week for
so
Keedy Johnson, isn't it? Because he comes back at Surrey and he scored, was it 32? He goes to Czechia and he had
five.
25. First leg of this one, what did he have? He had 20 something again, didn't he?
Yeah.
20, where is he? 28, and then 27 here. I mean, it's some week that.
Yeah, and it was, and we've mentioned the whole. We just talked about this for 10 minutes, and not mentioned Jared Sheffield.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Just went for 36 in a
yeah.
semi-final.
Career
Legos,
high.
where he's played his third game in 5 days.
Mm,
I mean, that's a character thing. That's and he's a bit of a street guy. He's not, he's a guy who could easily have six or he could have 30.
mm,
Probably more likely to have six than have 30, given his career numbers.
mm,
But he played with confidence. He played with aggression. He gives you a bit of rebounding. He gives you a bit of steal. He got stuck into a couple of the German guys in the one of the EMBL games as well. And he plays with a little bit of force. And he just turned up.
mm.
And they didn't really run him off the 3-point line, so he made 6 of 8, and bang, he's got 36 points. He's comfortable. Um, and yeah, I think he was actually the player of the match. Actually, I'll give
Do
the guy.
you?
Yeah, I
Okay.
do. I'll give the guy who makes all the threes ahead of the guy who makes all the foul shots.
Well, I
Um,
just thought it was the game was blown open by the free throw shooting in the
Johnson,
first
yeah, but
half,
without
and
without.
and the fact that Christian's sitting on the bench for a long time because he's the one committing all the fouls, isn't
Yeah, but
he?
without Sheffield, you still got to score 100 to win in
You
Cheshire.
still got to score 108 to win the game. Yeah, you're right. That's true. That's fair
It's
enough.
36.
I
But
was all for I was all for giving it to both of them.
yeah,
Blow up the rules and give it to both of them.
but the
I don't have a spreadsheet for that, so I don't care.
but they
I'm
should.
still not happy about bloody Dukes and who was the other guy, the Sheffield player? It's gone out of my head with their
Oh,
joint MVP in
it was
2000.
Jeff Bonds.
Jeff Bonds, that's him. Brian
Yeah,
Dukes
I
and
keep
Jeff
testing it.
Bonds. It throws
Yeah,
the spreadsheet out.
yeah,
How am I
right.
supposed to count that?
Yeah, that's nonsense. Yeah,
But
it
for
was.
a single game, I'm quite happy. Quite happy.
No, the biggest thing for Bristol though is that's a schedule loss. They're playing.
Mm,
They're playing.
yeah.
Tuesday, Friday, Sunday, coming back from Czech Republic, Czechia, and to go into Cheshire on a Sunday, and to play with that degree of energy and that degree of togetherness. That's what carried them through ultimately. Cheshire just cracked earlier than Bristol did.
Mm,
But Cheshire. I think they're going to have to kind of go back a little bit to basics. They're going to have to work out what is their identity. I've kind of lost their identity a little bit. That they play different ways. If Holden's handling the ball, to if Rock's handling the ball, to if Scott Grayson's got the ball in his hands. They play different ways when Atwood's on the court to when Kristen's on the court. They're different players, and they're trying to fit the same. So Atwood will shoot some threes from the corner, which are
mm,
kind of Kristen-like shots. But you're also not maximizing Atwood with his ability to get to the rim and ability to kind of beat people down in the post. Then you've got kind of the whole White and Teague thing. Do they need to play together? Do they need to play separately? Do they need to split minutes? Do you need to go smaller with your four guards? How much of a load can they put on Holden? That'll depend on how long Austin's out, because Austin gives them a bit of a break. But I just think they just ever since that first leg, that sub within 40 seconds, it's like, what's your plan? Yeah, you're gonna have to retrench and figure out what your plan is. And the best thing about losing games is that does that for you. You
mm,
have to do it. You have to go back to basics because you have to start right at the beginning. You can't keep going, because if you don't do that, then the players will say, well, nothing's changing. We're going to keep losing. So we'll see what kind of adjustments they make going forward. And they did, to be fair, they struggled last December, and then they came out after Christmas and just
yeah,
went.
yeah. Went wild in
So
yeah.
they've had the kind of the pre-Christmas problems before. So we'll see what
Mm,
happens.
yeah. Some mad stats in this game. Holden, 28 point,
Pound for pound, some of the mad
pound for
stats
pound,
I've
some of the
seen. Yeah,
maddest stats I've ever seen in the history of British basketball.
yeah,
Holden, 28 points, 7 rebounds, 10 assists, 4 steals.
mm,
Rock, 9 of 13 shooting for 25 points.
yeah.
Kristen, 18. Sherfield, 36 points, 6 rebounds, 6 steals. Johnson, 27 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals, 13 fouls drawn, 17 of 17 free throws, as we talked about. And Robinson, 7 of 8. We didn't even mention Robinson.
Yeah.
7 of 8 shooting, 17 points and 8 rebounds. Any other week, that's the lead guy, isn't it?
It is, and then ultimately that might be the difference because that's more than Cheshire got out of White and Teague and Ulf.
Mm,
And the thing with Robinson is he can step out there, but he's also going to get you the cheap ones under the
mm,
basket,
mm,
which with the way Cheshire play, they're not really going to get those from White or Teague. White occasionally posts up, but primarily those guys are out there spacing the floor, so you're getting your points from elsewhere. Cheshire didn't shoot the three ball particularly well. I think if they'd shot the three ball a little bit better early on, maybe that might have just carried them forward. But it's tough. They give it 55 at half time, and the only way you come back from a 9 point deficit is defense.
mm,
What about getting stops? It's not about scoring. You're going to score eventually. You got to get your stops, and they never rank. They never put enough stops together.
mm. So, I know we've been focusing on the trophy. That's Bristol through to the first ever SLB trophy final. Congratulations to them. A second trip to Birmingham.
I don't like that. It's like Premier League started. Football started in 1992.
Yeah, I know. I
It,
know.
it didn't.
I
Ian
know.
Rush up there. Frank McAvenny was great. I just keep calling it the PBL.
Yeah.
I'm
Uh, I think there are legal reasons that we
yes.
ought not to
Well,
do that. Leicester and Newcastle will decide in a couple of weeks as to which of those two teams will face them. But my general rule of thumb is the team that wins the first leg generally wins the tie. That's the maths, folks.
because they start in a basketball game, which most of the players are just interested in winning,
Yeah.
and they start ahead. I
Well,
did.
it's not even that. It's if you're good enough to beat them, you usually beat them a second time. Is the
I think that's right. I think it is. What I will say, it is pretty rare that you get a team which kind of wins the second leg, but by less than they need to.
Bristol did it last year, didn't they? Against was it last year, or the year before against Leicester?
But no,
They
not if that was a 23 point game, though, wasn't it, or something
no,
silly?
no, there was was it no, it was 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago because we didn't have them last year, did we? It
Yeah.
was two
Okay.
years ago. Leicester won by 8 or 9, I think it was,
Right.
and Bristol won by about 7 or something like that. I can't remember exactly.
Exception that proves the rule.
Yeah, yeah, it very much was. So we focused on the trophy, but we will because I know we have Sheffield fans who want to hear the league table read out. And we also, speaking of statistics that improved, we found in doing this a listener who is both under 40 and remembers Robbie Pearce and can point him out to the table officials. So it's quite good.
Oh.
So Sheffield Sharks are top of the league.
Under
Six,
40, really. Oof,
yeah, six.
get the rest.
You were there for his birthday, apparently. He celebrated his birthday with you, apparently. That's what I heard. Sheffield Sharks are top of the league, 6-2,
I
and it is the
don't
first
do
time. Hey,
I don't do kind of cameos, you know. I mean, it's not like I'm not Nigel Farage.
I
Maybe we should
almost
just
I almost
start.
said something that I would live to regret there,
Yeah.
but Farage said it once. Sheffield are top of the league. I'm going to get this stat out. Come
Yeah.
hell or high water. Sheffield are top of the league, 6-2. The first time in 11 years that they have been outright top of the league, uh, which is quite impressive. 2013, December 2013.
It's probably
That's
quite unimpressive if you think about it.
well, yeah, I suppose.
Now, yes,
Definitely,
it's surprising because they've had some pretty good teams. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
certainly,
yeah, yeah.
albeit, yeah, certainly, the Brooks team, and but I suppose they were playing through kind of the Newcastle Leicester era,
Yeah, that
whereby
the
we
issue was that either Newcastle or Leicester lost
like
3 games over the
we're
course
like
of the
10-1.
season.
We're like the best chances early on in the season, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
And
yeah,
both one of those teams was like 10-1 or 11 and
yeah,
0.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I get that. I mean, but I mean, there was a league, there was a season 14-15, not 14-15, 13-14 where they tied us, I think.
Mm.
BJ Holmes beat us, and they only had 6 losses all season, but
Mm.
they were never
If
top.
you remember, they also had that year where they finished second behind Leicester, where they made a bit of a storm at the second half of the season, but Leicester were quite well clear and they just were better than
Oh
everybody
yeah,
else.
yeah, miles ahead. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, that's not 6-2. I think they're probably deserved 6-2 to be
Yeah.
honest. I mean, certainly, that's of course I deserve 6-2 because I won six and I lost two.
Mm.
But on the pass the eye test at the moment, I think that's what
Well,
you
I
would say.
think they look like the best team in the league at the minute.
I wouldn't judge them on Caledonia and Surrey at home.
No, no, no,
I mean, I'm beating
and I'm
Leicester.
not,
Yeah,
but
I'm
yeah,
beating the way they beat Leicester.
yeah.
The way they handled Leicester was impressive. I think there were a couple of other London. Who knows where London are going to
Yeah.
be? Um,
The reality is that that there's about five teams that I could say are not far off the
Yeah, I mean
that
Cheshire
fantasy.
played them close. Newcastle beat them
Yeah,
twice.
yeah, yeah,
They haven't played Newcastle in the league yet, so
mm,
they'll be competitive games as well. But
yeah,
yeah, I think on the pass the eye test at the moment is
yeah,
kind of the pieces kind of fit together and they don't look. I think every other team kind of looks a little bit incomplete.
mm,
So with Cheshire without Austin in particular, Newcastle kind of as I say without really a backup point guard, Leicester with their bench struggling. London with they've just signed a point guard, I think
yeah. They
Peterson.
have, yeah, Peterson,
So
Tom
they're
Peterson.
putting so whereas Sheffield are probably the close, and they're the teams that are really towards the top that you think would have a
Mm,
shot.
mm.
Sheffield are probably the most settled of all of those teams. You
Yeah,
would say.
yeah. I think that's the thing is since Clay's come in, and I really like him. I think he fits
Yeah,
really well with that team. They've
yeah,
just looked consistently good, and I think other people have gone like that in
yeah.
the interim. But as I say, it may not.
Well, I think basically they
I
have
reserve the right to change my mind in a couple of weeks' time,
well,
just in case. London are in second place, 5-2. Newcastle in third, 4-1. Leicester 3-2. Bristol 2-2. Cheshire 2-3. Surrey 2-4. Caledonia 1-5 now, and Manchester 0-4.
hmm. I miss Bristol out of that as well. Bristol obviously
Bristol, yeah,
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 2-2, and they got Keady back, so
yeah,
we're waiting to see how that kind of continues to pan out as
yeah,
well. But yeah, outside of Manchester, probably Manchester, Caledonia, and probably Surrey, you could make an argument that any of the other six
yeah,
is the best team in the league at
yeah,
any
yeah.
point.
Yeah, yeah. I probably have at some point. If I'd said this out loud at the end of every week, I probably would have said all of those teams at one
Yeah.
point or another. So there we are. We're at the end of another week. What's happening? Oh, Cheshire are playing Bristol again next week. So
Oh, of course, so yeah, 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 of course.
when they
Just like
do it.
Newcastle playing Leicester
Yeah,
again. Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah. And we have the excitement of the cup. So actually, it might be really short next week because we
yeah.
won't see any of the bloody games.
Oh, right. I don't know.
No, they
Oh,
put out a thing this. I think it was
yeah,
this
right.
week
None of them are
saying
going ahead. Well, to be honest, that kind of makes me feel happy because I don't really want to watch them. I'm sorry.
you don't want to watch Falkirk against Leicester and
Only to see
St
the
Mirren
expression.
against who
Only
are
to see the
playing.
expression on Rob's face when the floor's a bit slippier than it should be.
Yeah, yeah,
No, I don't. I think I like the thought, but I think the outside of a couple of NBL teams, and there are some good NBL, a
yeah,
couple of
yeah.
good.
There's a couple of them. I'm interested to see Hemel. I'm interested to see
Yeah, but outside of
Nottingham.
NBL teams,
Yeah,
then I mean,
Derby.
having Leicester travel to London, travel to St Mirren, and Leicester travel to Falkirk, and there's a couple of the NBL teams as well. These are going to be 30, 40, 50 point games,
Mm,
unfortunately. And again, opinions. Sorry, Scottish fellas,
mm.
but opinions. It's and
Well,
you
I
can't
think
develop if
if
it's
nothing
worth
else,
it.
is I think Ali Fraser is playing for
Oh well, that'd be cool.
Falkirk, and
Oh
Johnny
well.
Bunyan's probably there, isn't he?
Oh
And
well, Johnny's great.
maybe,
Obviously, they'll keep it to 20. Um, but I just think, okay, that's not really the aim of it. The aim of it is to expose the game
yeah,
to
yeah,
level. And that's just we've done that for so many years. And I think it's just a bit of window dressing. I'm afraid, and give them and I'm home to, I think it's window dressing because even way back when I was a kid and Gateshead were drawn against some proper Carlsberg League team, it was like
mm,
40, 50 point game. And it just seems to me that it's kind of, pat them on the head and say, okay, I'll see you again next year. But there's never any steps are taken in the meantime to make these clubs better. There's a drawbridge which is kind of pulled up from SLB, and I understand why with the business side of it. The basketball England doesn't, or not basketball Scotland, basketball England has no real interest in developing their semi-pro clubs because they're too busy running under 12s leagues and nationally. And we just every so often, you might get a team of kind of ex-BBL players ex-SLB players who end up playing in the NBL and improving that league. And the league is getting better. I'm not knocking it.
Mm, mm.
There are good players. There are very good players in there. But you know as well as I do the depth level. There's good players on Caledonia, but they got beat by 40 by Dion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Everything is relative.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Practice and train 5 days a week are going to be different to teams that train twice a week.
yeah, yeah.
It's just
But there is still something very British about having lower league teams coming into a competition and playing, and just for the historical purposes, the biggest ever win uh, since the British Basketball League was formed, at least, was a cup game where Corby Flyers lost 57 to 157 to Solent, so 100 points. And there was in that same season there was a game where Swindon Rakers, I don't know what that means, got beat 40 to 133 to the Worthing Bears, and I'm pretty sure Worthing were in Division One
would
in
sound
that
a bit
season,
like
and
they're
Swindon were in Division Two.
made up of park attendants.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah,
or that Simpsons clip with Kate Fear, where
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, yeah, it is very British, but if you're talking about football,
The
football,
reality is in football is you can get
you're upwardly
absolutely
mobile.
you can well, but you can also get absolutely battered and win 1-0.
You can get battered and win 1-0,
Yeah,
and also you can make a lot of money by getting beat 7-0,
yeah, 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 yeah,
and you're upwardly mobile
yeah,
because you're thinking we can get to this next level.
yeah, yeah.
No, there is no such pathway. If there was that pathway in our situation, in our sport, I'd be fine with it.
Mm,
But there is no such pathway. And, I've seen a couple of guys get injured in games whereby you think, would that have happened against a pro team?
mm,
And maybe it would, maybe it's
mm,
just chance.
mm,
But it's just different. It's just different. So yeah, I'm not going to miss not watching those games. And of course, I'll regret that when somebody beats somebody who should.
yeah,
Are
yeah.
they doing are they broadcasting Newcastle Caledonia the week after? Because that's a
I
that was
assume so.
quite big.
I'm sure it read something along the lines of they're not doing it at the non-SLB venues. I think was
Oh,
basically
well, we'll see. Cool. I want to see that. I'm quite looking
the
forward to
most important thing, people, is we started this show with
that.
Dave in full hyperbole, rah
Yeah.
rah,
Yeah. Rah, rah, rah.
stealing tweets from Lasker almost with his excitement, and we've ended it with, "I'm not bothered about missing any of this rubbish." At the end, we brought him back to the good side, shaking his fist at clouds and telling people to get off his lawn.
Fair enough. I'll live with that. I'll live with that. They're
So,
great.
so it might be short next week because I think there's only about 2 games and then that'll be televised. But we'll be back next week anyway. We'll do something. We'll work something out. But for now, goodbye.
Bye, guys.